Hello, my name is Dennis Pravinsky, and welcome to Grandpa Dennis's Woodturning Studio. Today, it's all about casting wood in resin. It starts off by preparing the wood, putting it into a casting pail, and describing the kind of resin to use and how to get a two-tone color in the resin. Then we start talking about the equipment that is best suited for the job. Stay to the end and see if my efforts to get two-tone coloring really worked. You'll see that I used clips from a previous video, but with much more detail on the casting process. I'm going to trim this down on here. And then I think I'm going to cut it straight across and see if I can put two of these pieces, the two pieces from here, into the pot, like so. First task is to cut the piece to fit into the bucket. Then I have to start preparing the piece for casting. That involves taking all of the bark off. That's not bad. I have to clean up this bark in between. I think the wire wheel will do a good job on that. This piece has more in there. I think I can hit that with the chisels a bit more. I find that it's very important to have the drawbar on the chuck when you're using it on a lathe with the wire wheel, because as you put pressure this way on the wire wheel, there's a tendency to loosen up the Morris taper, and if that happens, your chuck starts wobbling, everything wobbles, and at the speed, that's not good news. Taking off all of the bark is a good idea. It allows the resin to bond better to the wood. As well, you don't want bark to show up in the finished product. Usually this bark sticks on there like crazy. Cleaned up, and I've glued it together with a spacer in between. It's looking pretty good. I've decided to make the burled part on the outside, and the reason for that is if I turned it the other way and had all of this figure inside, then I'd be turning away most of it when I turn the bowl, and that would just leave this outer part on this side. And I'm putting it into a smaller pail so it fits a little bit better. And there she is. Now it's time for the epoxy. So this is just a cup that I got from leftover something in the kitchen. Washed it out, cleaned it, and measured out the cups and put a line in there. So I poured a cup of water in there, then I poured a second cup and then a third cup. So I've got the lines in there. So I've got another announcement. I've got another sponsor for my channel, and that sponsor is Designer Epoxy. I have used this product since the very beginning, and it has been fantastic. But the biggest thing to this is the customer support. And when you call them in Montreal, Canada, you get phenomenal information and help from Gabriel. It's just amazing. So this product, no matter how deep a pour I make, it never seems to crack. I'm quite amazed. Very good. And they have a lot of other different products. If you go to their website, Designer Epoxy CA, you'll see everything else that they carry. Now, what I really like in the epoxy, and most of the ones that Designer Epoxy sells, they've got the powders that they use, and a lot of them, like the pumpkin orange, turn out to be really fiery. There's 3 different colors in that particular epoxy. And it just comes out. You don't have to mix the colors together or any of that sort of thing. I like the fact that it's variegated. In other words, multicolored. So I've got some black pearl, and I'm going to mix that. And I've also got mother of pearl. Now, I don't think this has enough white streaks in it. So here's the experiment I'm going to do. A lot of people that use the epoxies are wanting to get those several colors and waves inside the finished product. That never seems to work very well. It seems like when you mix a container of black and a container of white, and then you pour both of them into your mold, they just meld together and you end up with gray. You don't get those streaks. But yet, when you get the pumpkin orange and it gives you that fiery look, you're not mixing anything together. You're just putting the pumpkin orange in and it happens. My theory is that if you mix the powders together and then put it in and mix it up and pour it, maybe then you'll get more of the streaks. Well, I'm going to try that. The other thing that I'm trying is Hypershift. It's blue, green, gold. So I'm going to put that into the mix as well, and I'll see what happens with that. So it's a time for experimentation. So let's get on with it. In this case, I used 3 scoops of black, 2 scoops of the white pearl, and 1 scoop of the Hypershift. This held 3 cups, and I used 5 of these. 3 times 5, 15 cups. So you can calculate what that comes out in gallons. Ugh. Okay, now the wood has floated about an inch or 2 off the top. So I have discovered this fantastic invention. This is very high-tech, a high-tech piece of cardboard. I'm putting it on top. And another high-tech piece, this is a special weight called a brick. And it's going on top. And that's going to force the wood to the bottom. And by golly, even with that, I've got the resin just at the surface of the wood. Okay, next move is into a vacuum chamber. So the pail is now in my pressure pot converted to a vacuum chamber. There's a piece of acrylic, I believe it is. It's about 1.25 inches thick. Special gasket on the lid, on the lip of the vacuum chamber. So my blue pressure pot doubles up as a vacuum chamber. There's 2 advantages to that. Number 1, I don't have to move my casting pail from one chamber to another. And secondly, the acrylic lid does not take up a lot of space. That's a real plus when you have a small shop and you're trying to store a large vacuum chamber. The bubbles rising in the casting pot are a result of the vacuum pulling air out of the resin and the wood. Oh, you can see the resin bubbling now. I've got about 4 inches of height of those bubbles till it overflows the pail. and I don't want that to happen. This process will take probably an hour, maybe 2. So I believe this process is doing 2 functions. Number 1, it's getting the air out of the resin. And that air gets injected during the process of stirring the resin. Also, when you pour the resin into the cast mold, it puts some air into it as well. The second thing that I think it does is it pulls air out of all of the nooks and crannies of the wood, as well as, to some extent, the pores of the wood, especially if the wood is a bit punky. And when it pulls air out of there, it in fact creates a little vacuum in that cell or in that area of the wood. And when I release the vacuum pressure from the whole pot, that little vacuum in the cells pulls in and sucks in the resin that's surrounding it. So in a way, it's a method of stabilizing the wood and impregnating it with resin. And possibly a third side effect of the vacuum chamber is to pull out any moisture that's in the wood, and as it gets pulled out, resin replaces it and again stabilizes the wood. That latter detail is just a theory. Well, in fact, this is all just a theory. I'm now at 23 inches of vacuum, and there's very little bubbles left. I'm still getting bubbles up, so I'll keep this on for maybe a half an hour, then shut it off. If my theory's correct, the more often I shut it off, the more often and highly likely to get the resin to penetrate into the wood. Interesting, the moisture that was in that brick seems to have dissipated. It not only looks dry, but I see no bubbles coming out of it. So in a way, that confirms another theory of mine, that this does draw out the moisture as well, and it sends it through my hoses to the filter that's between the gauge on my vacuum and the vacuum pump. Okay, so I've got the air connected. Now I want to put air in there slowly again, because too much at once is going to cause the resin to splash up. There, I'm at 60 pounds. Piece out of the casting pot. The prep time for this casting took 4 or 5 hours. The vacuum chamber took 2 hours, and the pressure pot took 3.5 days. A mold release is usually a good idea to put into the pail before you pour in the resin. This would allow you to easily remove the molded resin from the pail. You can see the level of the resin has dropped off. That's not unusual as the resin soaks into the wood. Enjoy my videos, please subscribe, hit the like button, and give me a comment. Till the next time, keep on turning. Here's the finished piece, and you can see how the pearl white has really made swirls into the black. Grandpa Dennis is turning. I'm alright, 'cause I'm okay. Doesn't matter if my beard is gray. Just listen, I have something to say. I'm alright, 'cause I'm okay. And this old goat has something to say. So just keep learning. for Grandpa Dennis's turning.